Let's talk about the Redis database. Redis is a key value database. The database structure is almost like a JavaScript object or a Python dictionary. You have key value pairs. Every key is associated with a value, and the keys are unique. So let me give you an example. You have keys, for example, the key city, the key state, or the key country, and every key is associated with a unique value. Every key is unique and is always associated with a value. So we have the key city, which is associated with the value New York City, or the key country associated with the value USA. And you can use the key to retrieve the value. So if I say to the Redis database get city, it says New York City. If I say get state, the key state, it returns the value New York. If I use the key country, say get country, it returns the value USA. So it's a key value database where keys and values are stored as pairs, and you can use the key to retrieve the value. Now Redis comes with a command line interface where you can set and get values into the database. We'll get all into the details in this course, but the main thing to remember is that a command line interface exists, which you can use to interact with this database. Of course, you can also access this database using the computer, using a computer programming language. So if you use Node.js, if you use Python, if you use PHP or another programming language, you can also interact with this database system. Now, one key thing to remember is that Redis stores all data in the computer's memory. So when you write data or read data, all of that happens in the computer's active memory. It doesn't happen on the hard disk. So the result of that is that it's very fast because it's just like electronics. So the data is set and retrieved extremely fast because it doesn't involve the hard disk. Now, older hard disks have all these mechanical parts, so they are extremely slow because they have to move all the mechanical parts. Newer hard disks are a bit faster, but they're not as fast as the computer's memory. So Redis is a key value database which stores everything in the computer's memory. That's why it's extremely fast. However, for long-term storage, might not be the best solution because once you turn off the computer, of course, your data is gone. Everything's stored in the active memory. So the key thing to remember about Redis is that it's a key value database. However, there are different ways to interact with the database and different data structures as well. So in this course, I'll give you a quick introduction into the Redis database system. Before we can use the Redis database, the data structure server, we need to install it. Like with any thing, before we can use it, we need to install it. Now the installation will depend on your computer system. So the program or the server is called Redis, spelled R-E-D-I-S. You can install it with your package manager. Now, depending on your system, you will have, in Ubuntu or Debian, you will have apt-get. Package manager on Fedora, it might be Yum or something else. And same on SUSE Linux, or depending on which Linux system you're using. However, big chance that this is installed or available in your package manager. So it's called Redis. I'm on Ubuntu, so I can type sudo apt-get install. So sudo will install it as administrator, so it will install it onto your computer. And this is the package manager that on Ubuntu Linux. So that will be different if you use another Linux system. So I'm gonna press enter, so this command on Ubuntu will install the Redis, the data structure server. Type the password for installation. And that will install the Redis package manager onto your computer. Now you also want to install a package called Redis server. So once this is completed, you want to run another command where you install Redis server. So Redis-server. Again, install it with your package manager. So it's installed. And okay, so it's installed. You can check if it's working using a command called Redis CLI or command line interface. So Redis-CLI. And if you type that command, you get a prompt. This prompt showing you like your the address of your local computer. And in this, to test if the Redis is running, we can type a command called ping. So this is a command line interface for Redis. Redis command line interface. And if we type ping and it replies pong as output, that means that Redis has been successfully installed onto your computer. Now, if you're not sure about the installation commands, you can also head over to the Redis website where it shows installation instructions for your system. So this works for Ubuntu Linux. If you use another system, the installation might be slightly bit different. You can also do some configuration if your database is running. So remember to start the Redis command line interface. Type redis -cli for command line interface. Press enter and you'll get this prompt showing you this IP address, which is your computer address. Shows the ports of the computer. Port is like the window into your computer. And it shows this little character indicating the command line interface. So we can type commands. Remember to check if the Redis server is running. You can type the ping command, and if it's running, it will return the word pong. There we go, it returns pong. So the Redis server is running. Redis is running. And you can get configuration values by typing the command config get and then asterisk. So config get asterisk, and that will list all the configuration values for the Redis server. So if you press enter on the command config get asterisk, you will get all the configuration values. So you'll see there's a lot of stuff here that you can alter. For example, should it show a logo? And you have a lot of other stuff here. Most of it doesn't really matter for now. Like you can configure with any database like different kind of values. For example, you can change the log level, showing like should it only show warnings or should it show like only errors. So the log level can be changed, and like max memory, what should it do with max memory, which port it should be running on, and stuff like that. So that lists all the configuration values. You can also get a single configuration value. For example, if we type log level here, you'll see it only gets the configuration setting for the variable log level. Or if we type config get dir, which you'll see is like another configuration value here. If we type config get dir, it only gets the configuration directory. So you can type config get asterisk for all the values, or you can get a specific value like the log level. And that will get the configuration value. You can also change the value. So if you type config set log level, or whichever value you want to change. So config set will change the value, the name of the value, and then the setting. For example, notice it will set like the configuration value log level to notice. And if it was okay, it just returns okay. So you can change whichever value. So that's config get with the key. And if you want to change it, then you say config set key with your new value. So you can set any of the values. If I show you all of those values, any of those values can be set using the config set command. So config set, for example, you can set the master user to some value, or whichever you want to change. So config set get gets the value, and config set sets the value in the database. Now make sure that the Redis database is running. So before you do all that, type the ping command and see that it returns pong, because if the database is not running, of course it won't work. Now, one thing you can do with a Redis database is store and get data from the from the database. You can store data into the database, and you can get data out of the Redis database. And in this lecture, I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing to do is to start the command line interface so that we can type commands. And the commands we'll type is to set and to get data from the database. So start the command line interface using Redis-CLI. So command line interface. And then you get into the command line prompt, right? It shows this little greater than. So Redis-CLI. This command starts the command line interface. And now we can store data into the database. And we always store data using a key and a value. So for example, set name Frank. That would set the key name and value Frank into the database. You can say set drink is coffee. So you always store a key value pair. So this is a key and this is a value. This is a key and this is a value. And whenever the data is stored, Redis will just say, okay. So whenever you set commands, you can store data. Now, of course, this is text data, which should be between quotes, and it doesn't have to be a single word. So you can have a sentence as well. So always have it between quotes. But these are keys, and every key is always associated with one and only one value. So Frank is the value for the key name, coffee is the value for the key drink, Ubuntu is the value for the key Linux, and all work and no play is the value for the key Jack. And why is that important? Well, it's a pair, key and value pairs, and you can use the key to get data out of the database. So you can say get name. So you use the key to retrieve the value. Now it returns the value Frank. You can say get drink, returns the value coffee, which we said before, right? You can say, of course, get Jack, which returns the value for Jack. You can say get Linux, which returns the value for the key Linux. So it's important to know that key and value are pairs, and you can get data using the key. And when you set data, you always use the key and the value. So it's always set key value to set data, and you can get it using get key, and that will return the value. So it's always a key value pair. Now, text is not the only type of data you can store, and sometimes you have more than one value. For example, if you have students, there's not just one single student, there's many students. If you have customers, then you have not just one customer, but a multiple of customers. So that's a list, and in Python or other programming language like C, you have arrays or lists, so like collections of data. Now in Redis, you have the same thing. For example, we can have a list of students, and to put data into that list, we can use a command called lpush. So lpush with the key students and then the value. Example. Let me clear the screen first. So Redis CLI, we type left push to store data into our collection or into our list, students, and then the value. So that pushes the first item, the first value into the key or into the list students. So notice that the only difference here is that we use the lpush command instead of the set command. And lpush, like list push or left push, then Redis knows it's a list. So because it's a list, we can put multiple items into that. So we can add another student and add another student. And to get a value from that list, we can type lindex or left index with the key and then the index. Now computers start counting from 0. So 0 will be the first item, which in this case is Bob. You might think it's Frank because it's the first item we push, but because we use the left index command or the left push command, it's the other way around. So if we type 1, the index 1 will be the second item, Alice is the second item from the reverse order, and then 2 is the third item. Now, besides the left push, you can also have right push. So for example, if we have right push with another list, let's say computer, and you can say keyboard, screen. So we push data into the list, mouse, and now if we get the item, we say index computer 0, and you'll see now keyboard is the first item. So when you use the right push command, it is the regular order. So 1 will be the second item and 2 will be the last item. So if you use rpush, you have the same order as your regular list. So you'll see keyboard, screen, mouse, and when we retrieve them with 0, 1, and 2, you'll see keyboard, screen, and mouse. So you might be inclined to use rpush more than lpush, because rpush is the regular order that you use as a human, whereas lpush puts everything in reverse order. So list is another type of data you can use, and we can also type the lrange command, for example 0 to then the stopping value, and that shows the whole list. So you can also do that with the students list, students 0 to 10, and then it shows you all of the items in that list. Now it might change depending on if you've been playing around. So I recommend trying these commands on your own. Try creating your own list using the rpush command with the key, which is the list name, and then add some values, and then use the lindex command to get items from that list, and also try just to show the entire list with the starting and end value. You can store more types of data in Redis or in a database, so that might not come as a surprise because of course there's more than text values. One thing you can store is a hash. A hash in Redis is a map between string fields, so text fields, and text values. And so they are a way to represent objects because you can have a collection of string values. We start with opening the Redis command line interface, so redis-cli, the command line interface. And then we can start storing a hash using the command hmset. So hmset lets you store a hash. And for example, we can type test demo example1, and we can retrieve it using hmget, and then the key and the fields. So you'll see it, we store the key and the value, and using the key we get the value. Now you can do that for multiple commands or multiple fields. So you can say demo1, example2, demo3, example4, 3, and then you can say hmget test demo, or hmget test demo1, or demo2, demo3. So you can have multiple fields for that key. So this is the key, and these are fields. Now to make things a bit more clear, let's do another example where we say hmset and the key, for example, we can have a car. We specify a field, speed, color, wheels, maybe another field, maybe the maximum speed. So that's for this key. We now have multiple fields, and you can use that hmget command to get for the key a certain field. So you can say hmget with the key, and maybe you want the first field, so that returns 80, or hmget car wheels returns that field, or color, or maximum speed. So whenever you have an object, like a car or something else, it can be a good idea to use a hash because it lets you store multiple fields for a key. So this is the key. Just for understanding, let's do another, create another object. So let's say HMSet, maybe with a house, and say price, rooms, size, maybe another field for the house, location. So now it sets multiple fields, so these are all fields for that key, and you can use that HMGet command to get the fields of that key. So for example, the price, you can get the field rooms for the key house. You can use HMGet house key and the size, as well as the location. So HMSet, it's key, and then your field value, field value, field value. So that sets the fields for the value key. So it's this command lets you set multiple fields for a key, and you can get a single field from that key using the HMGet command. So that's HMSet and HMGet as shown here in these examples. So try to create your own hashes. So these are called hashes in Redis. Try to play around with those commands yourself. One key thing about a database is that you can store data in different ways. So another way to store data in Redis is a set. It's a collection of unique strings or unique text values. And a set is always unordered. So the key thing about a set is that the values are unique. We can start the command line interface redis-cli, and let's create a collection. So a collection of unique values. For example, call it products, and then a value, products, add another value, so we can add values to our set products with the command sadd. Say bread. So we added a bunch of products to a set called products using the command sadd. So that's sadd space your set collection name, value. So key, value, key, value, key, value. So set creates a set instead of like a regular collection, and the values are unique. So if I type as members products, you'll see the items in our set, and when I try adding the products again, so for example, if I try adding the product milk many times and then get the list or the set items, you'll see it remains only unique text. So even though we run the command add milk several times, there's only one occurrence of milk. That's because a set only has unique items. So set, you can add items using sadd, and using the commands set members or s members, you get the items, and the items are always unique. So that's the main difference with the lists. Another difference is that it's unordered. So I added coffee, tea, and milk in this order. Coffee, tea, milk, bread. And you'll see the order is totally different. It's coffee, milk, bread, tea. So a set doesn't really care about the order, but it does care that the values are unique. So if we run like add bread several times, then you might expect that bread appears several times, but no, it's only there once because a set only has unique values. So this is different from a list. So if we have a list of, if we create a list, so with the right push commands and say list A, and we add, for example, milk several times, and then we show the list items, you'll see you'll see that the item appears several times in a list. So with a list, the items are not unique. However, if you have a set with as add, so you can have several items and every item is unique. So you can add more than one item to your set. However, if you try to add the same item several times, and you get the members, then all of the items are unique. There is no duplicate entries in there. So that's the difference with a set. The commands are sadd to add items and smembers to get items from the set. Now remember, we can create a set. So start the command line interface, Redis CLI, and we can create a set of data using the sadd command. And a set is a collection of values which are unique. So it can be a list of names, can be a list of cars, can be any type of lists. So we can say car, and add different cars. And it's unique, so if you try to add the same one and then get the list items, you'll see you only have 3, even though we run that command several times because set values are unique. And they are not in the same order, so we added Opal first, and Opal is now on the 2nd place. So when you have a set, it doesn't really care about the order. We can add more items. And when you request, you'll see that it doesn't care about the order of insertion at all. So Mercedes is now on top instead of the last item. So we added it as one of the last items, but it's on top here. And the other item is in the bottom. And it doesn't really care about the way you inserted all the items when you have a set. Now, if you do care about the order of insertion, you can use another command called zadd. So zadd creates a Redis set, but this set will be in order. So you can say my cars and add items. And you need to specify the position. So you can say 1 is Opel, 2 Mercedes, 3 Ferrari, 4 I don't know, something else. So you can add, you can create a set which has an order using the zadd command. And then we can show the items also. So for example, using zrange my cars 0 to 10, and that shows you the items of the set. And you'll notice now it's in the same order. So you have Opel, Mercedes, Ferrari, Hyundai, Toyota. And here the same order, Opel, Mercedes, Ferrari, Hyundai, Toyota. Now the key difference here is that we use zadd instead of sadd. And we have to specify the index when you want to distinctly define. Now with Redis, you can also create a transaction. So what is a transaction? A transaction is a group of commands that you can execute as a single step. So if we start the command line, we can start a transaction using the command multi, which means multiple commands. So a transaction is nothing more than multiple commands. And then you can type your list of commands. So for example, set name Alice, set car, set, so whatever commands you want in there. Now it doesn't only have to be key value pairs, so you can use HM set, you can send hashes, you can store sets, example, we can add a set. And you'll see it returns queued, which means we are creating the transaction, but it's not executed. Now, we can execute this transaction or we can discard this transaction. So if we type discard, it will delete all of the commands. If we type execute or exec, it will run all those commands at once. So if I type exec now, and it run all of these commands at once. So that's the transaction. It's just a group of commands that you can execute in bulk. So if we type now get name, you'll see it stores this value, it ran that command. If we type get car, you'll see it ran that command before because we get the value for that key. So multi creates your transaction, which is a group of commands, and then you can either execute it or discard it. With exec, it executes. With discards, it deletes that command. Whenever you use Redis, you use a server. A server handles all the database operations. So if I type Redis CLI, start the command line interface, you have a database connection in the background, and this database connection is called the server. The server handles all of the database operation. So you can check if the server is running using the ping command, and if it returns pong, then the server is running in the background. Now you can get you can list all the database information. If you type the info command, that would return, for example, the version of the Redis server, which computer system is being used, which processor is being used, how much time has it been online, how many clients are connected, is any client blocked, all kind of information, how much available memory is there, statistics, processor information. So if you type info as a command, you get all kind of information on the server. You can also get just single values from the server. So if you type info and then the section name, for example, server, you only get information about the server. So for example, the Redis version, the operating system used, which architecture, the process ID, which port is being used, how long has it been online, and that kind of information. So info would just list all of the server information, but you can also get a specific section from the server. So if I type info, you'll see a huge long list, which doesn't even fit into the terminal. So if you type info with a specific section, for example, clients, it shows you, 4 clients are connected to this server. So you can type a section name, which only shows like a short list. Now, memory might be very useful. So if you type info memory, you can get information about the memory. And that's very useful because Redis stores all of the data in memory. So that's why info memory can be a very useful command. You can get general statistics. So if I type info stats, shows you general statistics. You can get information about the processor, the CPU. So you can get all kind of information. But in order to get that, make sure it's connected. So if you type ping, make sure it replies pong. So that way you can be sure that the server is connected. If the server is not connected, of course, you cannot get information. So we can say, for example, info server, which is probably the command you want, which shows you information about the server. Or maybe you want information about the clients. Info clients shows you information about the clients, about the number of clients that are connected. You can also be more specific and say client list shows you which clients are connected and their computer addresses. So you'll see 4 clients here, 1, 2, third client, and the 4th client also was listed with the info clients command. Shows you 4 clients are connected. Client list shows you specifically which clients that are. And in my case, if you have this address, that means it's your local computer. If you have it running on the internet, those addresses might be different. There might be different clients connected to your computer. So you can run all kinds of commands which get and set information on your Redis server.